Welcome back, my dear followers. This is a new episode of the History of the American Mafia, a series brought to podcast by Fabio Fabiano, translated and read by me, Grace Carlisi. I hope you enjoy today's new episode. Salvatore Maranzano. In 1927, amongst those arriving to the States, at the age of 43, one of the most important protagonists of the history of the American Mafia set foot on the Promised Land. He was a completely different criminal from the previous or the later Italian gangsters. The underworld portrayed him as a true leader. Salvatore Maranzano was a cultured and ambitious character and was later considered as the last of the second wave bosses. At first glance, he certainly didn't look like other mafia bosses. He was a very distinct person who could easily have been mistaken for a banker. Maranzano was born in one of the highly symbolic places of origin of the Italian-American Mafia, Castellammare del Golfo. As a young man, he started out on a completely different path from the one for which today he is remembered. He started his studies in a seminary, but soon dropped out, although he was unusually well educated. So much so, he used to put the interlocutors of the criminal world in difficulty with a rich vocabulary and refined quotations. His English, however, was rather elementary, but nonetheless he proved himself a man of culture and a great admirer of the Roman Emperor Julius Caesar, which led to his nickname Little Caesar. Due to these characteristics, he had a great influence on both his fellow countrymen overseas and the Italian-American gangsters in New York. Initially, he became a member of the Sicilian mafia organization from Castellammare del Golfo. He married Elisabetta Minore, the sister of the mafia boss from Trapani. His family was fully included among the noble families of Trapani's mafia at the beginning of the 20th century. Maranzano had crossed the oceans several times, working for the mafia and its import-export businesses. Contrary to other criminals, he had already consolidated a position in the mafia in Sicily. In fact, he was remembered there as a representative of the province of Trapani. During the investigations, his name was brought up by Dr. Melchior Allegra, a general practitioner who ran a clinic in Castelvetrano. Allegra, arrested in 1937, released a detailed confession of 36 pages, which allowed Italian investigators to trace events and personalities of the mafia from the past. Allegra had been recruited by the mafia in 1916, and his task was to provide false medical certificates to the so-called honorable men in the mafia who wanted to avoid being signed up to fight the Great War. He would frequently be seen at the Birreria Italia, an elegant cafe and pastry shop located at the crossroads between the streets Via Marqueda and Via Cavour, in the heart of Palermo, where he met and became acquainted with all the Sicilian mafia bosses from all the provinces of the island, and the most important exponents from each area too. In fact, that same elite cafe was the exclusive criminal base for the Sicilian mafia world in those years. There were persecutions against the mafia implemented during the fascist regime, executed in Sicily by the so-called Iron Prefect Cesare Mori. Therefore, in 1927, Maranzano fled to the United States of America with his wife and 4 children. It is thought that he probably arrived in the US via Canada, headed to Buffalo and spent some time there. He claimed himself to be a trader of fish and organized a flotilla of fishing boats in New Jersey. He bought a luxury home in inner New York State and another in Brooklyn, as well as a luxury office on Park Avenue, the business heart of Manhattan. At that point in his life, he professed himself to be an estate agent selling buildings. He made contact and later joined a clan from Castellammare, led by the mafioso Nicolò Schirò. He was involved in two types of illegal but lucrative activities. The first was liquor smuggling, where he took care of both the production as well as its retail. The second was immigration. To run these criminal enterprises, he counted on the support of his fellow countrymen, in particular the young Giuseppe Bonanno, who was also in charge of the armed escort of his trucks that transported alcohol during the Prohibition era. Thanks to his illicit activities, about 8,000 people came to the United States, passing through France and Germany. Found in his possession were telephone numbers of judges and immigration officials, as well as contact details of businessmen living in Paris. His illegal immigration activity intertwined with that of 500 Sicilians with highly respected criminal records who illegally arrived in America, escaping the repression of the mass fascist government indicted by the prefect Cesare Mori. The clandestine departures of the migrants to the States were organized at the Birreria Italia. They were charged 6,000 lire, that is the old Italian currency, per person. The transfer was perfectly organized from departure to arrival, in fact waiting for the illegal immigrants in New York were the Castellammare mafia members, ready to arrange their accommodation. If by chance an illegal immigrant was stopped by American security guards and not permitted access to the States, only part of the sum paid was returned. These two illegal trades, both the producing and distributing of alcohol and favouring illicit immigration, ended up strengthening even more the power of the intercontinental mafia gangs, including Maranzano's. Maranzano and his clan were connected to the bosses from San Giuseppe Jato and Piana dei Greci in Sicily up until the last few months before leaving for the USA. In 1930, Joe Masseria, the Morello family boss, blackmailed Nicola Schirò for extortion, imposing him to pay a high bribe because the Castellamarese clan was becoming too powerful and was also allied with his arch-enemy Salvatore d'Aquila, boss of another gang in Brooklyn, who was killed in 1928. An alleged transgression committed by Schirò was the pretext for paying the $10,000 bribe, along with a request from Masseria advising him, so to speak, to resign as head of the mafia family. Schirò paid the bribe and disappeared. Shortly after, Vito Bonventre, affiliated with the Schirò clan, was murdered in his home on July the 15th, 1930. At that point, the other members of the family elected Maranzano as boss, instigating a conflict with Masseria. From this point on, what will be remembered to this day as the War of the Castellamaresi began.